Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the ultimate Scott Pilgrim Iceberg, created by yours truly, Mr. Spaceman. Now, since I haven't seen anyone make a video since the anime came out, I decided I'ma do one. This iceberg is mainly mostly to the people who have seen some Scott Pilgrim media or are big fans of all of them. If you know all of these topics, I'll be surprised because some of these I didn't even know until I researched for this video. Huge thank you to the Reddit users Antonio64 and Night Fury Witch for the help researching for this video. And I added a few of my own to add something to this so it wouldn't be just a copy and paste. And before we start, make sure y'all subscribe. This wasn't easy to make and subscribing is free and it helps me out a lot. So here it is. Hope you like it, made it myself. We got a lot to go through, so let's not waste any time and start from the movie. Of course, the most popular Scott Pilgrim product is the 2010 movie Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, starring Michael Cera and directed by Edgar Wright. The name is inspired by the second comic book name. This movie is a cult classic by many fans and it stood out to a lot of people because of the acting, action, story and all those extra effects that were in the movie. It wasn't like any other movie that released in 2010. Comic book. Like I said, the movie is inspired by the comic book. There are 6 books in total, with the first one being made in 2004 and the last one being made in 2010. And honestly, this thing is a must read if you haven't. Brian Lee O'Malley. Brian Lee O'Malley is a Canadian cartoonist, according to Google, and is the creator of the Scott Pilgrim comic book. Not much is known about Brian's personal life, he kept that pretty secretive, but we know that Scott Pilgrim was only the second graphic novel he made, with the first one being called Lost at Sea that was released by Omnipress in 2003. He also worked on other comics like Seconds and Snot Girl. Ramona Flowers. Ramona Flowers is the love interest in this story. We don't know much about her, but she's from America, works for a delivery service, sometimes Amazon, sometimes Netflix, depends where you look at, dyes her hair a lot, and she dated a lot of people. Michael Cera. Michael Cera is a Canadian actor and is known for roles in Superbad and Arrested Development, but he's also Scott Pilgrim, and Arrested Development is the way that the director found out about him and wanted him to play Scott. Anime. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is a spin-off anime adaptation of the Scott Pilgrim story. It was originally pitched in 2018, but the idea wouldn't come to its full flesh until 2023, when it was released on Netflix. Negative XP. Negative XP is an American punk artist, or what I like to call it E-punk, who has been making music for quite some time. But one of his most popular releases is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World Ruined the Whole Generation of Women. It's a pretty catchy tune with some funny lyrics, but when this song came out, it caused quite a discussion. Like, just watch this YouTube video. But the controversy only helped the song, and now it stands at almost 9 million views on YouTube and 21 million streams on Spotify. Michael Cera felt depressed after the movie. In his interview with GQ, talking about his most iconic characters, he talked about his time on the Scott Pilgrim movie, and I'ma just let him explain.
It was a long shoot, I mean, for me in particular, because other people kind of came and went, you know, but I was there for, I think, 9 months or something, which is like an enormous amount of time to work on something. But it was so much fun all the time because we just had the greatest vibe with everybody. I think that basically trickled down from Edgar and the energy that he was creating. We all got to rehearse together and spend a lot of time together before we even started making the movie. By the end of the movie, I felt like this is my world, this is my group of friends. It kind of feels like, oh, this is always gonna be this way. And honestly, I kind of was a little depressed when we were done because it all just goes away, and you're like, where did everybody go? You know, so you kind of get used to that as you get older and as you're acting for a while. But I was sad to lose it. I could have kept making that forever, even though it was exhausting.
Lil Uzi Vert. Lil Uzi Vert is a Philadelphia rapper and has used Scott Pilgrim name and imagery in his album covers like The Perfect Love Tape, Lil Uzi Vert vs. the World 1 and 2, and his song Scott and Ramona. And he stated that the movie is one of his favorites. After Nardwuar gifted him a poster of the movie, this is what he had to say.
What do you say about Scott Pilgrim? One of the best movies I ever saw in my life. I've been watching movies for a very long time, and I haven't found a movie that topped this movie. The story behind this movie, the cinematography, the action, everything about this movie is just so perfect for the time that it came out, and it's classic and timeless and a very, very gem to Canada and America and the whole world. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is the greatest movie ever.
Video game. With the Scott Pilgrim universe being heavily inspired by video games, it isn't surprising that a video game would be made. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, is a 2D arcade-style beat-em-up type of game where you can play as multiple characters from the show. You can play solo or with friends to defeat all the evil exes. And recently, developers made a complete version of the game with the DLC that was released January 5th, 2023 to accompany the anime being released that year. The full complete game is available on Steam. Plum Tree. Plumtree is an indie rock band from Canada and is the creator of the name Scott Pilgrim. Scott Pilgrim also wears a Plumtree t-shirt in the movie, the comic, and the anime. In the back of comic volume 1, Brian Lee O'Malley talks about how he found out about the band. Finding an obscure indie band CD labeled Cinnamon Toast Records in the Sunrise Records at Westmount Mall may have been a miracle. The album was amazing, and Plumtree became one of my favorite bands. They were cute and cheerful on the surface, but their lyrics were funny and violent and moody and dark. They were only a little older than me, mostly still in high school at the time. When they were touring for their second album, they came to London, and by then I had a driver's license and took us, me and my sister and her friend, Amy Stevens, to the show, at a dive called the Whippet Lounge. We randomly ran into Plumtree's bass player, Kate Triona, who took us inside and let us hang out with the band for a little while, before the show started. So amazing. My sister and her friend were still like 16 or something and couldn't stay out late. I still remember the searing guitar from the song Scott Pilgrim blasting out the door as we reluctantly left. Scott Pilgrim vs. the Animation. Scott Pilgrim vs. the Animation is a small animation scene released on Adult Swim a day before the movie came out that animates the first chapter of the second book. It was used as a promotion material for the movie. The full thing is available on YouTube, and over the years it has garnered 8 million views. Scott Pilgrim is Brian's life. In an interview with the French publication ARTS, or Arts, Brian was asked on how he came up with the story of Scott Pilgrim, and this is what he had to say.
Just the beginning of Scott Pilgrim. I was in Toronto and I had a gay roommate and I had a band and I had an American girlfriend. So I had that was the settings of my life, and then I just started a story in it and changed all the characters and went forward from there.
Fourth wall breaks. In the Scott Pilgrim comic book, there are many fourth wall breaks, which they kinda snap you out of the story when you read it, but they are quite hilarious if I say so myself. Lisa Miller. Lisa Miller is Scott's classmate, who we only see appear in the comic number 2 in a flashback when Scott is 16 years old. We don't see much of her after because Scott moves to Toronto. We only see her after in the 4th book, but not after that because she's moving to LA to pursue her acting career. She is this deep in the iceberg because we only see her in the comic. Scott gets a job. Scott surprisingly gets a job working in a veggie restaurant as a dishwasher with Steven Stills, and in typical Scott fashion, almost loses it after a couple of days. The movie cast email chain. Chris Evans revealed in a GQ interview that the cast of the Scott Pilgrim movie has an email chain that they all communicate, and surprisingly, it's still active after so many years of the movie being made.
Another film where there was a rehearsal period. That was more physical based. You know, a lot of people had action sequences. I had to learn how to skateboard. But the rehearsal was so fun. Then you leave and come back a month later to do your bit, and you just have such horrible FOMO. You just, well, what you guys been doing? Have you been having fun? Send me pictures. Yeah, to this day, that email chain is still very active.
Brian's Twitch streams. Brian streams himself very often nowadays on Twitch, almost daily, and you can catch him drawing, playing games, or just talking about his work and his plans. Link in description. Free Scott Pilgrim. Free Scott Pilgrim is a special side story that happens between the 3rd and the 4th book. I'm not gonna spoil what happens in this, so you just read it if you're curious. Scott Pilgrim game license expired. On December 30th, 2014, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, was suddenly delisted from the Xbox Live Arcade and PlayStation Network. The reason as to why wasn't made abundantly clear, as there was no official statement. However, it was likely due to the license expiring with Ubisoft. Mr. Chow. Mr. Chow is Knives' father, who only appears in the 4th volume of the comic book and is there to fight Scott after Scott breaks up with Knives. After a few fights, which is just Scott running from him, Mr. Chow watched him fight Roxanne and is depressed, so he left Scott alone and said this to Knives. As far as I'm concerned, Scott Pilgrim is a halfway decent young man. Maybe you dating a white guy wouldn't be so bad. Which Knives understood nothing. Scott Pilgrim is a fool. In one of Brian's Twitch streams, someone asked him why Scott is an asshole. Brian responded with this.
Someone said, Brian, why is Scott an asshole? I don't think Scott's an asshole. I think he's a fool. I don't know, I think it's a different thing. Yeah, I mean, the story is about, wait, these guys come to life. The story is about how you can unintentionally do harm. I mean, that's part of it, for sure. You don't have to be a real full-time asshole to be someone who can do harm to other people. The story is like Scott sees Gideon and Scott realizes, Gideon is this big, overblown, evil guy, but like he's done some of the exact same stuff. So, you know, I think it's the wrong message to be like, Scott's bad, everyone else is fine. Because, like, everyone is kind of, you know, a little bit of a gray area in this book.
Bread makes you fat.
Bread makes you fat.
Bread makes you fat?
Edgar Wrong. Edgar Wrong is a play on the name of the movie's director, Edgar Wright, and you can see why. Edgar stated that everybody growing up made that joke, and the cast made it so much, it even made it to the anime. Steven Still's name origin. We know that Brian is inspired a lot by music, so it's no wonder that some of his names for his characters are taken from musicians. And that goes for Steven Stills, inspired by the American musician by the same name. Young Neil name origin. Same thing as Steven, but this time is Flip, inspired by Canadian singer Neil Young. 33 takes. In the movie, after Ramona delivers the package Scott ordered, Scott instantly threw it in the trash. This wasn't CGI. It took Michael Cera 33 takes to get it right.
So yeah, 8 o'clock?
Envy's hair is inspired by Asuka. Asuka is a character from the popular anime Evangelion, which Brian admitted to being a huge fan during his high school years, and you can see it for yourself. Funko Pop line. Unfortunately, there are Scott Pilgrim Funko Pops. The movie flopped. Surprising to everyone, when the movie first came out, it performed poorly, and it low-key flopped, only being able to make $49 million with the budget being $85 million. There are a lot of factors that have caused this movie to flop. Some say it was too childish, like the plot of the movie and all the video game references and the fighting scene. My theory is that Scott Pilgrim before the movie was basically unknown and people just didn't understand it, so it took some time for it to take off and become what it is now, a cult classic. Ramona's natural hair. Ramona's natural hair is one of the biggest mysteries in this story. Because Ramona changes her color so much, we never actually see her natural hair. Some theorize that it may be blonde or red, but the most popular one is brown, and that would be my guess too. In book 3, even Scott asks her after she dyes her hair one more time if that's her natural hair, and she said that it maybe is, which is a lie. Scott Pilgrim card game. Scott Pilgrim's precious little card game is a deck building card game released in October 2017. If you want to learn how to play this game, there's an awesome video by the Game Boy Geek explaining everything you need to know on how to play it, because explaining everything should be an entire specific video. I suggest you should check it out if you're interested. Hole in the Moon in the movie. In book 3, Ramona explains that when her and Todd were dating, to impress Ramona, he puts a hole in the moon for her. But that conversation never appears in the movie. But if you catch it in the right time, the hole is there. No blinking. Edgar Wright told the actors that they shouldn't blink at all when filming. If you look back at it, nobody blinked for the entire movie. Honest Ed's. Honest Ed's was a store that the final fight between Scott and Todd took in the comic. Honest Ed's is a real store, and it's like a Canadian version of a Dollar Tree or those super discounted stores, and for Canadian standards, it was super old and ancient. That's why Scott and Todd were going crazy inside. Unfortunately, the real Honest Ed's was closed at the end of 2016, but there is a new one opening 1 block from the old location in Toronto. Knives fight with Ramona in the mall. After Knives finds out who Ramona is, she tracks her down and finds her in the mall, where they have their first of their many fights. But why does this fight stand out? Well, because Knives has knives, obviously. So Ramona, with a lack of weapon, grabs a metal pole from the building and beats the shit out of Knives, and Knives backs out. Honestly, wanted to see this in the movie, but what can you do? Bread makes you fat in seconds. In Brian's other comic, Seconds, there is a nod to Scott Pilgrim with a bread makes you fat reference. Scott Pilgrim's script is on Genius. For some reason, the entire movie script is available on genius.com. Yeah, I don't know either, but it's there. Edgar Wright email for the anime. When the anime was being discussed between Edgar, Brian, and other people, it took a long time to make it into a reality. This discussion started at 2018, and the email towards actors wasn't sent until 2022. And in this Rolling Stone article, we have the exact email Edgar sent to the email chain like the actors have. Hey y'all, I have some happy news. We've been talking about this for years now, so you may have already heard something about it, but we're doing a Scott Pilgrim anime show for Netflix, and it's just been greenlit. Brian Lee O'Malley has co-written all new scripts with Ben David Grabinski. They are both a faithful adaptation, but also something different, surprising and very fun. I think they are all really special scripts. I'm sure you will too. Of course, having you all, the greatest cast of all time, and though it would be a dream and meant a tremendous amount to everyone, it goes without saying, but it's worth saying, Jared would follow up with a bunch of more info. But I'm jazzed by what I've seen so far, and I think it will be an awesome and lovely continuation of this wonderful book. Over to you, Jared. Edgar. That was the email, and after only 3 hours, everyone replied. Knives and Kim make out. In the beginning of Volume 4, the group have a fun day at the beach to celebrate Julie's birthday, which goes on until the night, so they go back to the house, aka Julie's aunt's house, and you can see they're all pretty drunk. After Scott looks for Kim to see if everyone is back at the house, he looks for Kim and finds her with Knives making out. Knives is still 17 at this time, and Kim is Scott's age, aka 23 to be exact. This never gets mentioned again, but it's kinda funny because Kim was the first one to judge Scott for dating Knives, but this happens. Alright, this is weird. Next. Clash at Demon Head is NES. We know that Brian uses video games for inspiration, so it's no surprising for this. Clash at Demon Head comes from an NES game released back in 1989. On how Brian came up with the name, you can see it at the back of volume number 2. So listen, there's a band called The Clash. There's an NES game called Clash at Demon Head, the first game I ever got. I put a "the" in the front of the video game in order to get the band name. Like a mashup of 7 punk band with an old weird Nintendo game, okay? Scott's late fee went up. In the second volume of the book, Scott goes to a video rental store that Kim's work at because Scott wants to rent a movie, and Kim says that he owes over $1,000 in late fees, but the computer shows that the exact number is $504.28. But in the anime, the fee shot up to $3,500. Envy cheated on Todd with Scott. In book 3, Envy claims that she's been with Todd since 11, and Ramona cracks a joke that he cheated on her with Ramona, which Envy said Ramona is being ridiculous, and Ramona was just trying to state the obvious, because they dated in high school. But Scott and Envy dated in college. And I don't know about you supermodels, but I don't know a college that lets 10-year-olds attend. There's this panel where Envy and Scott were making out, and some guy named Jacob is calling her phone, but the way she said his name, we know she was lying about this guy, who is probably Todd. Yeah, this relationship was doomed to fail, and it does. Anti-piracy screen. If you play the Scott Pilgrim video game and have the illegal version of it, aka pirated, this will happen. And you have no choice but to turn it off. And if you restart it, same thing will happen. Launchpad McQuack is a real song. Scott Pilgrim in Peng. Peng is a one-shot 72-page sports action comic written and drawn by Corey Lewis and published by Ani Press in 2005. And it features Scott as a substitute member of the Dolphins. Joseph and Lisa in the anime. In the final episode of the anime, in the crowd you can spot Joseph and Lisa. Wallace original name. On Brian's Tumblr, Neptunes.wish asked, why is Wallace's last name Weldon on the apartment mailbox in book 1? Which Brian responded, his name was originally Wallace Weldon. I guess I wanted to insinuate that he was related to the character Dave Weldon from my earlier book, Lost at Sea. I changed my mind and named him Wallace Wells obviously, but I forgot to fix that one occurrence of Weldon on the mailbox, and I decided to leave it as a way of a weird Easter egg. It's been changed in the color's editions though. Weldon is the name of the main campus library at Western, where I went to university for a little bit before dropping out of classes and bumming around working in their library system. What happened to the X's? Again on Tumblr, Subspace Suitcase Deactivated 2 asked, if no one dies in the SP series, what the baloney happens to the evil X's? Does their existence transfigure into coinage? Which Brian responded, they respawn in their homes, having learned their lesson. Canon. Nega Knives. Honestly, I put this here because of this Reddit comment. But anyways, Negan Knives is an assisting character only found in the video game who's an evil shadow version of Knives Chow. So if you want to see her, you can find her there. Seth Rogen could have been Scott Pilgrim. In an interview with IndieWire, Edgar Wright revealed that Donna Langley, Universal's president of production at the time, pitched that Seth Rogen should play the leading role of the movie, because Rogen was coming off the success of his movie Knocked Up, but as Edgar stated, he couldn't get his idea around it and he had another idea. He loved Arrested Development, and in his eyes, Michael Cera was perfect for the role. He's Canadian, he's scrawny and goofy, and plays the guitar. In his mind, it was perfect, and he was right. Edgar Wright hates Seth MacFarlane. After the movie flopped by box office standards, Edgar Wright didn't like it that it turned into a bit of a punchline, and he got particularly annoyed with Seth MacFarlane. In quote, "I never liked Seth MacFarlane. Because of that weekend he tweeted, Scott Pilgrim 0, The World 2. And I was like, fuck you. And then I laid until A Million Ways to Die in the West came out, and I rubbed my hands with glee. I didn't tweet anything about it because I'm not a total monster. A Million Ways to Die in the West was also a flop in the box office, only making $16 million on its opening weekend, and it was not reviewed great by critics. The actors were told secrets. There is a popular theory going around that the writers of the movie, and possibly Brian Lee O'Malley, told everyone each 10 secrets about their characters. However, Brian Lee O'Malley denied this, as he stated, "I just sent a bunch of notes to Edgar and Michael Bacall. Bacall created 10 things based on the notes, and that a lot of it was jokes, just for fun." The Cornetto Boys. Some of you maybe missed the Cornetto Boys in the anime, so boom, here you are. They're the police officers. And if you don't know who they are, they're a trio made of Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, and Edgar Wright, and they are most popular for the film trilogy, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End, all directed by Edgar Wright, so you know this is some good shit. Gideon the Cat movie cameo. Did you know there's a secret cameo of Gideon the Cat in the movie? We always see the cat in the comics and in the anime, but not a lot of people saw him in the movie. I'll play you the clip and let me know if you see.
We almost held hands once, but then she got embarrassed.
Well, aren't you pleased as punch?
I don't know what you're talking about.
So what's her name?
Did you see it? I'll play it one more time.
We almost held hands once, but then she got embarrassed.
Well, aren't you pleased as punch?
I don't know what you're talking about.
So what's her name?
Psst, check the mug. Bingo. Montreal Campaign DLC. Montreal Campaign DLC is a cancelled DLC for the Scott Pilgrim video game. In one tweet, Brian Lee O'Malley says that there was a planned DLC that was cut in 2009. The reason behind the cut was budget reasons, and it would include, like the name says, a Montreal part of the map, and it featured Envy, Todd, and Lynette from the Clash of Demon Heads. Ramona's dead brother. Like I said before, the actors were told secrets about their characters. We never got much information about these secrets, but we do know this. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who plays Ramona, stated that one of the 10 facts about Ramona is that the shoelace around her neck belongs to her dead brother. We don't know if this is true, but Brian denied this being canon. Doug. Doug is one of Ramona's ex-boyfriends, and is one of the only ones who isn't evil, but is described by Ramona as still a dick. He is briefly mentioned in volume 5 of the book when Scott asked her if she dated anyone who isn't evil, and that he is a rare exception because Doug dumped her, according to her own words, unceremoniously. Also, fun fact, Doug is named after one of Brian's friends of the same name. Not safe for work, Valentine pinup art. On Valentine's Day 2012, Brian Lee O'Malley shared a very revealing pinup art. Like, I don't know if I can show this on YouTube without being demonetized. It's a drawing of Kim, Wallace, Lisa, and Ramona in very little clothing and looking seductive in the drawing. Yeah, on to the next, I don't want to talk about this. Ramona's foot fetish scene. There's a story going around that Edgar Wright shot a creepy scene with Mary Elizabeth Winstead to satisfy his friend's foot fetish. I don't know if this story is true. I mean, it's Hollywood, anything could happen. My only source is this Reddit comment, so take that with you will. My theory that it didn't happen, but I don't know, people are weird around there, I don't know. Coin killer ending. This one is fucked up. Coin killer ending refers to one of the two alternative endings of the movie. One is just that after fighting Gideon, Scott ends up with knives instead of Ramona, and the ending was filmed and there is a version of it on YouTube. But the other one is a lot more dark. The ending goes that the entire movie is actually inside Scott's head, and that he killed all of those exes and scattered coins around the body's location, and that's how he got the name Coin Killer. And that Scott made up the entire plot of the evil exes to justify killing all those people, kinda like an American Psycho. That Scott is a serial killer. The ending was confirmed by Edgar Wright, but it was never filmed, and the only reason it wasn't filmed is because they didn't have time. Holy shit. That's it. Alright, that took a long time. Way too much effort, way too much time. Could probably do a part 2. I definitely have some more things to talk about. If this video does well enough. I don't know. Thanks for watching. Comment pencil if you made it this far, so I know. And yeah, that's it. Anyways, I'm done.